In the anime, we have a ton of jutsu, but did you know that there were some of them that no ninja was allowed to use? For a jutsu to be considered forbidden, it had to fall under one of three rules. 1. Altering the laws of nature. 2. Causing harm to the user themselves, causing a lot of damage. And 3. Causing mass destruction, like huge, over-the-top explosions. But honestly, pretty much any jutsu already falls under one of those rules, like altering the laws of nature. Pretty much every jutsu is made for that. But what counts as a forbidden jutsu are the extreme cases. The explosive jutsu from Iwagakure. The jutsu used by our dear Deidara-sama was considered a forbidden jutsu. And for those who don't know, Deidara wasn't born with those little happy hands. No, he stole that jutsu from his own village. Deidara's village's jutsu was based on creating those hands, those mouths on the user's hands and chest, so the user could infuse chakra into other materials and create explosions. But Deidara had something extra. Deidara himself already had a Kekkei Genkai related to explosions. So this Kinjutsu from his village was a perfect fusion with his own innate ability. So why was Deidara's jutsu considered forbidden? Basically because of its potential for mass destruction. In fact, any of Deidara's jutsu that created explosions with that clay was already considered a forbidden jutsu. But Deidara still had a second forbidden jutsu that was kind of considered separate, which was that last jutsu he used as a sacrifice. The C0, which not only broke the rule about jutsus causing massive damage, but also violated the second rule, which was causing harm to the user themselves. In this case, the technique caused the ultimate harm, death. It was a self-sacrifice technique. So, besides causing an explosion about 10 kilometers in diameter, the user would die. It's hard to find a technique more forbidden than this one. The 8 Gates technique, used by the two most charismatic ninjas from Konoha, the thick-browed ones, Guy Sensei and Rock Lee. The 8 Gates technique was basically forbidden because it broke the rule about causing harm to the user. Starting from the first gate, which removed the limits the brain puts on your body's functions and unleashed 100% of your physical power, it already caused some damage to the user if they couldn't control the technique well. But from the second, third, and fourth gates onward, the damage just kept increasing. But, however, nevertheless, we saw that depending on the ninja's training, it was indeed possible to use the gates up to the 7th gate's limit without suffering too much damage. But the last and 8th gate, that was it. There was nothing else you could do. And when it comes to the 8th gate, the jutsu not only breaks the rule of causing harm to the user, but it also breaks the laws of nature by distorting space and time. It's so intense that it's said that the red smoke coming off the user when they're using the final, this 8 Gates technique, is actually related to the user's blood evaporating and creating that red cloud around them. Rasenshuriken. This was the first technique that Naruto created. I think the first and last, and it was basically about infusing wind style into the Rasengan technique. It was named Rasenshuriken precisely because of its final shape, which kind of formed a shuriken around the Rasengan. So why was this technique considered a forbidden technique? Basically, also because it broke the rule of causing harm to the user. The technique was so intense that when it made contact with the opponent, it caused damage at the cellular level. And in the beginning, when Naruto was using it without being in Sage mode yet, he had to be close to his opponent to use the technique. He simply couldn't. He wasn't able to throw the technique. And because he was so close, the damage wasn't just inflicted on the opponent, it also affected Naruto himself, especially his arm, which was the part of his body closest to the technique. It almost rendered Naruto's arm useless, which is why Tsunade, who was Hokage at the time, ended up forbidding it. But after a while, we know that Naruto manages to overcome this problem and starts throwing Rasenshuriken around using Sage mode. Izanagi and Izanami are basically the Uchiha clan's hacks. Izanagi is the ultimate cheat. It's the jutsu where, basically, if you die, you don't actually die. It simply makes the illusion become reality. This jutsu actually makes it so that you really did die. The jutsu, or whatever it was, went through you, killed you, but it simply alters reality, and you end up not having died and staying alive. And why is it a forbidden jutsu? It's not because it's overpowered, but because it also breaks one of the rules and causes harm to its user, making them permanently lose the vision in the eyes that used that technique. So it's basically a sacrificial technique. You use it, and if you're just a normal person with only 2 Sharingan and not a psycho like Danzo who had 50,000 in his arm, you'll use it and be left with just one eye, my friend. If you use it twice, that's it. Now, Izanami is even more overpowered. It simply traps the target in an infinite loop jutsu that's impossible to escape. It's like the Avada Kedavra of the Naruto world. And it's forbidden for the same reason as Izanagi. It ends the career of the eye that used the jutsu. Byakugo is the jutsu demonstrated by the 5th Hokage, Lady Tsunade. The Jutsu basically turns you into Majin Buu. Someone can cut you, stab you, burn you, do whatever, and you just keep regenerating super fast. And why would a Jutsu like this be forbidden? For the contradictory reason that it causes harm to its user. But how does a Jutsu that regenerates you end up harming you? The Jutsu is based on accelerating the process of cell restoration. But by doing that, it ends up shortening the user's lifespan. So, if the user relies on this Jutsu too much, they're definitely going to kick the bucket sooner. So much so that we think in the anime that Tsunade looks pretty well preserved and, for example, Jiraiya even seemed a bit older than Tsunade, even though they're about the same age. But actually, Jiraiya was way better preserved than Tsunade. What we saw was simply a Jutsu that Tsunade uses to hide her true aged appearance. Shiki Fujin, the Jutsu that summons the devil and seals souls inside a kid's backpack, also breaks two of the laws related to forbidden Jutsu. It causes harm to its user. It's basically a sacrificial technique. And it breaks the laws of nature by sealing the user's soul in the belly of a ceiling fan. And you thought the Uzumaki clan was all nice, huh? Check out the Jutsu they created, just summoning the devil, no big deal. The curse mark, that cool tattoo Orochimaru would leave on people's necks, which also gave the user a lot of power, was also a forbidden Jutsu. Why? Because the purpose of this Jutsu wasn't just to give the user power. Orochimaru wasn't that nice. He broke the laws of nature in every way imaginable. For everyone who had this Jutsu, Orochimaru could use that person like a security camera. He could see and hear everything through them. Plus, if someone managed to defeat Orochimaru somewhere, he could resurrect himself using any of the people he had marked with the cursed Jutsu, because fragments of his DNA were left in them. Possession Jutsu, another one of Orochimaru's forbidden techniques. We all know that Orochimaru's whole life was about breaking the laws of nature, right? Because the guy wanted to be immortal. His very goal of becoming immortal was already something extremely forbidden. So every Jutsu he developed and everything he had to do had to be forbidden. And this was, without a doubt, a seriously forbidden Jutsu. And theoretically, this kind of Jutsu was supposed to get you sent straight to the afterlife, but in Boruto's Tsukuyomi world, they just let it slide. This Jutsu of joy was based on Orochimaru turning into a creepy snake, which was actually a combination of a ton of other snakes, and he'd fight the young grasshopper he wanted to possess. At the end of the fight, he would swallow the young guy, and in that process, he'd move from the physical realm to the mental realm, finally possessing the body and transferring his own mind into the target he wanted to take over. Edo Tensei, probably the most powerful Jutsu in the Naruto anime, was forbidden for a simple reason. It required a human sacrifice so you could bring anyone back from the afterlife. So if you had any trace of DNA from someone who had already died and a living human to use as a sacrifice, you could bring that person back, totally amped up. Just imagine someone bringing guy back. The guy would use the 8 gates to the max. Is there any way to win? There isn't. But at the end of the anime, they really toned down that heavy part of the Jutsu, where you had to sacrifice a living person to bring a ninja back from the afterlife, because instead of using real people, they used the white Zetsu as the sacrifice, which we know that. But just imagine the mess if they actually had to capture people from the village or ninjas from other villages to perform that Edo Tensei Jutsu at the end of the war. Man, that would have been really intense. You know, Heiden's curse technique, the Jutsu of the evil god, was also considered forbidden because it broke the laws of nature. The Jutsu involved making sacrifices to the evil god, killing a bunch of people out there so you could stay looking good, young, and with perfect collagen forever. So it's not hard to see why this Jutsu is forbidden. Rinnegan, the Sharingan, was never considered a forbidden Jutsu, but its evolution, my friend. If you had it, things probably weren't going too well for you. Or maybe they were, right? That damn I basically had a whole bunch of forbidden Jutsus inside it. The freaking Shinra Tensei that wrecked Konoha. It's obvious it was forbidden because of its ridiculously explosive power and also the ability to bring people back to life, which clearly broke the laws of nature too. Hashiramas would style, but why would style be considered a forbidden Jutsu? Unlike the others, it kind of doesn't break any of those 3 rules, but still, however, nevertheless, would style basically became exclusive to Hashirama. So, anyone who had this style after Hashirama probably went through some kind of experiment using Hashirama's cells, which, in the Naruto world, are more valuable than gold. So because of these experiments, style ended up being considered a forbidden Jutsu, because experimenting with Hashirama's cells without Konoha's authorization, my friend, was worse than evading taxes from the IRS.